All right, hi, welcome back. This is exercise 2, where we use the knowledge from reverse engineering to understand how we can recreate our sawtooth star block in Prequilt. So we're going to collapse the grid tab and then open up the blocks tab. And this is where all the blocks that are in the quilt are going to be. There's always a default half square triangle block created with every new quilt. We don't need that, so I'm going to click on the three dots to then go and delete it. This just keeps things really tidy. Now I'm going to click on the Make Custom Block button, and what's going to happen is it's going to open up what we call the block editor, which is kind of like a floating screen on top. It kind of has the same layout with the left side control panel, and it has two central toolbars. The first is all the shapes that we can use to recreate a block in Prequilt, as well as an SVG feature, which is more advanced, and that'll come later in some other course. There's a snap on and snap to position button, which I'll talk about as we recreate the block, and there's also that save button at the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is change that grid, and you'll remember from the reverse engineering, we broke down our quilt block into 4 equal spaces vertically and horizontally. And this is great because these grid lines can be used to snap to. They can also be really amazing guides for resizing quilt block pieces so that everything's going to fit together really well. So the first thing I'm going to do is rename our block. And this is just to help keep things tidy. You don't need to do this, but it's just to help keep things organized. And you can also quick save that. So if we remember what the sawtooth star looks like, we're going to start with the square block. And this is just a square piece. It's linked to Fabric Link A, which is just a fabric, the first fabric. It's one of the fabrics we're going to be using. And if I click on my mouse and hold on it, I can move that then into the corner. And you will notice that it's snapped. So what that means is that when that button, snap to position, is on, when I move that piece around, it's always going to snap and lock into the grids. I'm going to clone that by making a copy of it using the central toolbar clone button. And again, I can get it close enough and let go, it'll snap into the corner. I can clone it again with that central toolbar button. I can move it, and when I let it go, it's going to snap right into that corner. And this is going to be really great because it's going to give our blocks and our patchwork pieces that great locking in place for both the scale and the positioning. So you can always quick save along the way. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make another square, but I'm going to make it so that it's 4 units. Right now, we know we need it to be that black fabric, that other fabric. So I'm going to go over to Fabric Links and I'm going to click on the link button for the Fabric Link B. And then I'm going to move it so that it locks into that position. Now I want it to be bigger, so I could make 4 squares, but that wouldn't be very efficient. The best way is to click on the left corner, and then there'll be a little arrow, and when I drag that arrow, it will then make the shape bigger, and because it's snapping to scale, it will also use those grid lines to make that bigger square that fits perfectly into 4 of those grids. And that's the button right there. So now it's time to make those flying geese. I'm going to start with 1 half square triangle. It comes in as a default with Fabric Link A, and I'm going to move it into the position it needs to be. However, I want it to be using Fabric B. So I can push the link button, and then I can also clone it and rotate that half square triangle so that it's in the correct position to create those 2 little star points. So now I have the 2 star points, and this is where I'd like to note, you can see here that there's like a gingham background, like a checkered background, and this is a bit of universal design speak for transparency. There is currently nothing in this space right now, and that's why you can see that gingham background. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to fill that space We could either do it with 2 half square triangles, or we could do it with this triangle to make a flying geese. So it's going to come in. I'm going to move it up into the position that it needs to be. It's going to snap to position. But I'm going to drag one side of this to make it wider. The height will stay the same, but the width is going to change. Again, I can get it very close and release it, and it's going to snap to fit that width. Now it's just in the wrong orientation, so I can rotate it, and now you can see it fits perfectly between those 2 half square triangles, creating a very seamless flying geese in that position. Now we need to replicate this. I can either do all the steps separately, or I can click on the first shape, click on the shift button, and then click the other shapes, and they're grouped together now. And I can clone it and rotate it, and they all clone and rotate together. Again, clone and rotate it, and then move them. And because the snap to position is still on, they're just going to fall right into the correct place. Clone and rotate again, and now I have very quickly my sawtooth star. You can see that there's no gingham in the background. Quick save is always a good idea. And if I wanted to see it without the grid lines, I can go over and toggle that show grid line off under the block info. Now I have this really seamless, very beautiful sawtooth star that I can now add to my quilt. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to click on Save to Quilt, and you'll see how now it'll close, the block editor will close, and we'll see our sawtooth star block over in the blocks tab. Now I'm going to save the block and save the quilt. Alright, now that we understand how to create a custom block and understand reverse engineering, the next exercise is then to create a sawtooth star block inside your quilt. Alright, happy quilt making!